give you a bit of a perspective from a Canadian perspective on what's been going on, but just tying a couple of things together when, Gerard spoke about criminal versus civil prosecution. In Canada, the same thing is happening. We had the West Ray disaster. We had over 20 individuals killed in a mine, and there is a push on looking at prosecuting and getting a CEO or a senior manager to be prosecuted from a criminal perspective. Sitting with Edwin, he talked about the competency framework and looking at things like research. We're doing the same thing with our certifying body, the Board of Canadian Registered Safety Professionals, and us. We are actually going to go out into the marketplace to find out how many health and safety professionals and practitioners are out there. Because nobody's ever really done that. We'll take a look at that type of thing. And when you look at what Neil was talking about, again, looking at the safety profession and leadership and the competencies, we're going through those same exact challenges of looking at how do we develop the future leadership for our profession, but also for our organization. So what I'd like to do is kind of keep this in context of looking at kind of three things. What does it mean to be a safety professional? And a lot of things that we've had even in the discussion in the last 4 days is that the issues that are happening, whether they are in Singapore, in Australia, in the UK, here in the US, or in Canada, are pretty similar. And I think that's where the synergy of things are going to happen. What is happening with the profession? Again, it is evolving, it is changing, what's going from that perspective. And what does it mean on the global stage? The days of where you came from or where you were or could have been a limiting factor for you, and what we're finding now that today's with the virtual realities that are out there is no barrier anymore. And it doesn't matter where you come from, it matters as to what you're bringing to the table. Again, just looking at some of the statistics that are out there, we had the pleasure of going with a group to Turkey. We were at the World Congress last year, and some of these numbers came up. The numbers are dramatic. When you look at that, 317 million lost time accidents a year, 321,000 fatalities a year. I mean, the numbers are, looking at the global perspective. And then from the Canadian perspective, again, we're tracking at around 1,000 fatalities in Canada, over 260,000 lost time incidents. So there's this, I put this slide on just to kind of give us a perspective on, there's still a lot of work for us to do in moving forward. This picture here kind of represents what the safety practitioner, the professional would look like. There'd be a group of guys sitting around the table, usually the same age group, and looking at that. But again, when you start to look at how the profession is evolving, it is going into a profession. There is diversity there. This is pretty homogeneous. We're getting into diversity, young people around there, different disciplines coming into the health and safety profession. Looking at public health has become an issue. And again, younger individuals getting into the profession was traditionally used to be a second career for many. And again, you look at, it's always homogeneous, the guys around the table. Now we're getting back into having all these different areas come together. And that for us is the opportunity. Because what it is, it's also looking for us things, is that there's different ways of thinking, but also different ways of communicating. The traditional ways aren't there. And as that's starting to evolve, we are starting to look at those different things that are coming together. What does it mean for the professional? Again, you're looking at, in the old days it was, regulatory compliance. And what we're seeing now is that there has to be a value add to the business. Because if it's just regulatory compliance, you can get the codes and go from there. But now, are we starting to add to the bottom line? And we're starting to see that shift. Because if you're creating value, we're starting to see that that's coming together. One of the interesting things is whenever there was a downturn in the economy, the first person you got rid of was the safety guy. But now we're starting to see in the last 5 years, 5 to 10 years, I'm seeing that the safety person isn't the first guy out if they're adding value to the business, because that can start to add to the bottom line. The movement from a vocation to a profession. A lot of discussion on it when you look at the framework that was just discussed, and it is going to that stage of becoming a profession and evolving. Credibility in the workplace, again, and especially with the public, and also looking at the boardroom. The safety professional today has to be able to speak to the workers on the front line at 8 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, speak to the management team and the supervisors. At 10 o'clock, speak to the senior managers of the organization. And 11 o'clock, go into the boardroom. The same issue, discussing with different groups, and you have to have different strategies to be able to do that. There are many around the table of my colleagues that have a difficult time getting into the boardroom. And if we're not getting into the boardroom, we're not influencing. And that issue of being an influencer is important, because if we're going to be heard around the board table, that's where we're going to have the profession evolving. And again, Canadian best practices, processes, standards. What I'm finding that with the Canadian safety professionals that we have to work anywhere in the world, with the regulations that we have, a confined space in Canada is no different than a confined space in Abu Dhabi. But again, looking at what are the processes and the practices to be put in place. For us, an exponential growth. We have grown by 125% as an association, and we're continuing to grow. Creating the value for membership in our profession, looking at where does the safety professional go to get their education, and moving forward. For that has started us in the last 10 years with the growth that's been coming, is that we need to start to look at what is that value add we have for the profession. What does it mean on the global stage? Again, Canadian safety professionals do have a role in the international forum. We've been very successful, and I know also from talking to colleagues here, this thing about the borders are gone. We're moving. Everything is happening. There is an opportunity to showcase baby solutions. There are things that we've been doing with respect to disability management for the last 20, 25 years. I know there's been discussions with respect to when we heard, I was at the GRI discussion with respect to health and safety committees or worker involvement. We've been doing it for 25 or 30 years. It was a regulatory compliance issue, but what has happened now is it's become just a normal part of business. People are having workers involved, supervisors at all levels. Again, we have provincial and federal regulations that are adding value, and also we're getting involved on the international stage with things with working with ASSE, IOSH, with SIA, Singapore, with INCHO. There is a lot of that happening in discussions around the table. What does it mean for the profession? Again, increased growth for the society and our associations. There's new and different products have to come down. We've spent a lot of time looking at advocacy. We've actually learned from our IOSH colleagues as to how to get from a political perspective, but also from a business perspective of getting onto the stage. There are increased member demands. In the old days it was they paid their membership dues, they get a little certificate, and they get a newsletter here and there. They're asking for practice groups, they're asking for different things happening, they're asking for new tools, and we need to start to accommodate those. And there's a potential for exponential growth. It has to happen. There are a lot of individuals out there that are in our practice, but again, moving that forward. For CSSE, we look at our strategic plan. This is kind of going to be our focus, and we're not just looking for the next 2-3 years, we're looking at the next 20-25 years. Where is the profession going? Trying to anticipate that, trying to be ahead in that, looking at membership and the value, sustainability, but also looking at organizational sustainability for us as a profession in communication. This is kind of a simple framework that we put together looking forward is, again, membership. How do we get individuals around the table in recruitment? Looking at resources and collaboration and having that ability to do it. For us in Canada, distance was a factor. It would be very difficult to have a chapter in the Northwest Territories. We have one today. But also what happens is the ability to communicate with them isn't possible. That's what it used to cost. We're able to engage that group and have them going there. Online education, and again, trying to address that, what's in it for me? When you have members around the table, what is it in for, that I can go from there? One of the things looking at sustainability, one of the pushes that we're looking at is a CEO charter of getting the engagement of the senior leadership in a team that health and safety is as important as profitability, as important as productivity, and as important as customer service. Looking at partnerships, also we're looking at a national habit for health and safety. Getting health and safety up into the domain so that the public is involved with it, and looking at sustainability. From an organizational perspective, practice groups becoming very, very popular. That's where people of like-minded interests are getting together, and then mentoring programs. Who are the future leaders for our organization? And from a communication perspective, again, online tools, online pushing the things on Twitter, Facebook, that type of thing. We're starting to see stuff like that happen. Even a prime example of looking at what happened on Monday here at this conference is that it's already gone viral. It's gone out into the world. Anybody can see it. I can now say to somebody, this is what's going on in Denver at this conference, and you need to be part of it. So again, looking at CSSE, the issue of being leading organization, having the value products that are there for our membership and moving forward. And that really aligns with the work and the stuff that's been going on that we've heard up till now. When you look at the UK, looking at prosecution being an issue, and also, when the regulators are coming into your workplace. We have a bit of a different system in that our workers' comp premiums pays for the regulators to come in. So where you pay it from depends on which pocket, but that's how it comes through. So again, that's looking at just a global perspective for our organization in moving forward. But one of the things that I'm seeing is that there are many of the same issues that are going from around there. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you. Great, thanks very much.